So good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another interview of the Shield Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and today we're joined by Richard West. He's the keyboardist and singer for the band Oblivion Protocol, and he also plays in Threshold, which is a band that's been around for a long time. Everyone who knows prog would know that band, but now we're here to discuss his newer band, who is about to release a new album on the 18th of August. So first of all, Richard, good morning. How are you, sir?
Hector, I'm chilled, thanks. It's very nice to meet you.
Yes, you took like a second to respond. Like, I don't know if he heard me. Good. That's good to hear. So, yeah, I listened to the album, and it's really a very interesting album. It's very prog rock, and I know it's following a story from the album that you have with 2017 with Threshold. So, how did that happen? Because I was reading that the band didn't want to do a continuation, but you did. So did you tell them like, hey guys, I'm gonna do a continuation of this, but I'll do it like in another band? How did that went down?
It was strange, but it kind of just flowed naturally. So yeah, we were making what became Dividing Lines, our new Threshold album. And at the time we were going to call it Fall of the Shires. It was going to be the sequel story, because I'd kind of come up with this story and I had a couple of songs already. And then I think halfway through the writing, I think one or two of the guys just thought, well, it's a bit constraining, you know. It's I think they maybe had some songs that they didn't want to be part of the story, so they said, let's not do that. Let's just make it a normal album, and that was cool. And I'm really happy with that. You know, it's a great record. But I was left with a couple of songs and a storyline, and I wanted to see it through. You know, when you start something, you want to finish. So I didn't tell him. I just thought, well, I'll just make it for myself. My plan was just make a completely secret album, press one copy of vinyl, if that's even possible, slot that into my record collection, and I just have this secret record that nobody knew about. And that was my whole plan. So I didn't ask permission or anything, because it was like, no one's ever going to hear it. You know, I even gave it a crazy name to remind myself it was for nobody to hear. I thought the protocol for this record is Oblivion. It's going to be seen by nobody, heard by nobody, absolute oblivion. And that's where the band name came from. So so what happened that I wasn't expecting, I was talking to a friend from a record company. He asked what I was working on. So I told him. He said, "Oh, send me a copy. I'd love to hear it." And the next thing you know, he's offering me a record deal. And at that point, I think, okay, that's some unexpected turn of events. So at that point, I checked with the guys. I said, look, do you mind if I do this? It's kind of a side story, you know. It's a bit like a Star Wars sort of side movie, you know, an Obi-Wan kind of a thing. And they said that was cool. They were happy with it. And Carl, the guitarist, even played a couple of solos for me. So I kind of got the Threshold endorsement on it, which is nice. But I mean, you've heard the record. It's not very Threshold. It's a little bit Threshold. It's kind of got the heavy riffs. It's got a lot of Easter eggs going back to the Legends album, but it's kind of got its own thing going on.
Plus, you're singing on this one and on Threshold, so it's a different style of singing altogether too, right?
Yeah, very much. And so when I was making it, I was aware I've not got that big heavy rock voice, you know, like Glyn. I'm more of a prog singer. So I kind of, when I was making the music, I knew I was going to back the guitars off a bit, tune them a bit deeper to give a bit more space around the vocal, that kind of thing, and a bit more orchestration. It's slightly changing kind of flavor, really, because I thought, well, I'm just making this for me. No one's going to hear it. I'm just going to have fun, do what I want to hear, you know. And in the end, everyone's going to hear it. So it doesn't matter how you plan things. Life doesn't always go the way you expect.
So yeah, it's got like that Steven Wilson, Pink Floyd type of vibe to it, like in the vocals. So yeah, and there were parts of the vocals that it reminded me a little bit of James Labrie from Dream Theater at times. Just a little bit.
That's very unusual. I didn't expect to hear that. That's very unusual. Yeah,
in just a few of the songs, but not all, but a little bit. So this story, I know that I was reading that the story of the other album left off on what the main character was going to do with his life, but here in this album, there's I've heard it there. You know, there's chaos. There's those interludes where it says like you have like 10 seconds to leave the area. So it feels like a dystopian type of future, not very not very like it seems like it's gonna be dark. Like so when you did your when you were gonna work on this like the story, did you have it? Were you like while you were working on the music coming up with the story, or did you already have the story before the music?
So I think the first thing I got was the full part one, which is the opening song, and it's this idea
The
that the
full
guy
part
becomes
one,
the
yeah.
king. Yeah, so the guy becomes the king, and he's instantly faced with the problem of how is he can. I think it's how is he going to tame the weeds was how I worded it on Legends of the Shires, but it's basically how you're going to control the population. There's too many people, and so he's faced with this problem. And instead of coming up with the answer, it's not our problem to fix. You know, we can't try and find ways to kill the population. He asks his advisors for what he should do, and they come back with all these different ideas, and he says yes to all. And that was the premise of the album. And I remember when I came up with that back in 2018, I thought, I can't make that. That's way too dark. There's no way I'm going to make that record.
Yeah,
But
that sounds
yeah, it
like
sat with me for a couple of years.
yeah. Yeah, it sounds like that it's a metaphor for like no like no politician or everything when they get to power they don't know what the hell they're doing. So so
Yeah, absolutely
he
that.
says
And
yes to
I saw,
everyone. Mhm.
yeah. And so the album is kind of all those policies then getting enacted, and then you see what happens to the people, how that affects the king himself, and at the end there's kind of a hint of redemption for him. But it's a very dark story, and like I said, I didn't really think I should be telling it, but it felt like a kind of a movie script almost, and I thought, well, if I kind of approach it like a movie, then that kind of works for me. So hopefully the music lifts the darkness a little bit, and like I say, there is the hope of redemption in the story, and there will be a sequel as well. That's the plan, where things change quite a lot for him. So the story continues.
Yeah, it feels like in the end because it ends with the fall part two. So yeah, it feels like it could have a continuation. I know you released a few singles already for this album. I really like "This Is Not a Test," and I think this one of the first singles that you got out for this album. Why did you choose that song in particular?
I think everyone agreed that was the best single. It's funny, the longest song on the album, I think 6 minutes. So I had to do a couple of edits to bring it down to a single length. But we would have made that the first single, but it takes a while to actually make a video. So we all flew off to Sweden, filmed a video there, and then you have to wait for that to all get produced and everything. So it wasn't the opening song because we all thought that would be great if that was the first thing people heard of Oblivion Protocol. But instead, we brought out Forest and the Fallout, and that turned out to be quite a good opener as well. Starts
Yeah,
with these great blasts and then a voice saying Oblivion Protocol is now underway. Okay, that I hadn't planned it, but that's actually a great way to introduce the band to people. So it all worked out quite well at the end.
yeah. So this is not a test. What's the theme on that one? Like for that song in
Oh,
particular?
I'd have to get the lyrics out. It's really it's I mean the whole dystopian thing of the album is what you get on the track before it. There's a track called Public Safety Broadcast.
Yeah, that's a good
What you
one. Yeah.
Thank you. That was the other choice for a single actually. But on that one, you get the advisors are now going out and enacting the policies, and then with This Is Not a Test, you're really seeing the reaction of the people, what they feel about this, and realizing, hang on a sec, this is pretty serious. What's going on? And it's really you're hearing their thoughts about what's going on. So you're kind of moving to their point of view, and that's probably one of the things that makes the album flow. But it's also probably a weakness in storytelling that I keep changing my narrator. So you've got a narrator on the first song, and then you've got the king talking on, I think, the sixth song. You've got his advisors talking on track 3, and you've got the people talking on track 5. And it's a little bit confusing to follow the story. But what I
No,
wanted to
no, well,
do, what I
at
wanted to
least
do was,
Richard,
huh,
you didn't do the Astonishing by Dream Theater
okay,
because I I hate that album. It's a
okay,
dystopian future, but it's so bloated and corny. Yours is good. I like it
I
that it's
appreciate that. Thanks.
yeah, it's easier to
I certainly
follow.
won't comment on Dream Theater, but I think
No,
what
that's
I
just
felt was
my perspective. Yeah,
I think my reference point for making concept albums are albums like The Wall by Pink Floyd, where you don't get an obvious narrative, but you get almost like snapshots, you get scenes from a movie, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. So I thought I got 8 songs. I'll divide my story into 8 chapters, and then I'll
Mhm.
paint 8 scenes, and that's kind of how I went for it. So you don't get that narrator telling you what's going on all the way through like you would with musical theatre, for example. That's not what I wanted in the least. You know, I still wanted it to sound like a rock album at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's a prog album, but you know, it's not super long. It's got a good run time, and I think the songs flow well into each other, which is always good. With the story, like they flow well into each other, but you can tell the differences. And that one that you said, the public safety, I think that was one of my favorite tracks on the record, because it really feels like something bad is about to go down, like a confrontation. And it starts with like the horn saying that you have like time to leave or something. So yeah, I thought that one was pretty interesting. So Richard, you being a keyboardist, I know there's the keyboard on this album. There's, instead of like having like, there's guitar solos, but there were some like what I call keyboard solos. How important to you as a keyboardist is to have keyboard solos on the record?
That's a horrible question, because for me, a solo, I mean, whether you're talking about a vocal or the actual
Mm,
instrumental solo, needs to be full of emotion. So you think
yeah.
guitar solo, you think of the greats like Dave Gilmour. There's as much emotion as there is music in there. It's just a beautiful thing that you can do. And the same, I mean, it's not fashionable now, but saxophone solos used to be the same. You could put so much emotion into a saxophone because it's not just the notes, it's so much you can do with them. On a keyboard, you press a button and it makes a sound, and it's so much more difficult to get that emotion in. And you find different ways to work with it. You can use filters and pitch bend and various things, but it's much harder to have an emotional impact with a solo. You can be fast and flashy and you can put in a melody, but you know, it's tricky. So for me, as a keyboard player, I prefer records that don't have too many keyboard solos on, because I want to hear that emotion of a guitarist playing, you know.
Mm.
So with this one, I thought, well, it's got to have some keyboard solos on because I'm the keyboard player and it's my record.
Yeah.
So, so I did a few, but I kind of tried to focus more on a couple of the songs I'm doing dual solos with Root on guitar. And I like that. That works quite nicely, whether we're playing against each other or together. And that kind of works quite well. And then on the other bits, I just tried not to go too over the top. I didn't want it to be a big sort of widdly solo fest. That's not my thing at all.
No. Yeah, I know. There's a song that
So
has like a part where the keyboard comes into the forefront. I can't remember which song right now, but yeah, but it felt in place. It didn't feel like out of place with the song. Like it complemented the song well. That's why yeah.
I appreciate it. Thanks. I think it's probably because I didn't run away with it. I just wanted to keep it contained to its right space. And I think so. The first single, Forest and the Fallout, that has a keyboard solo on, and so it kind of works on there. It's against a weird time signature. I've got a great lead sound that I use, and I felt like I was able to invoke some sort of emotion and excitement into that one. And so I thought, yeah, I can do a solo there. But
Oh yeah.
not too many of them, because for me, I mean, the best solo on the record is Root playing on track 5, Storm Warning. He plays this almost Pink Floydy sort of guitar solo against Simon's kind of bass line, and you put them together, and it's just one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've heard all year. And I know I wrote the basics, but those two brought it to life, and it's just gorgeous. So I'd rather listen to guitar solos if I have the chance.
Yeah, no, yeah, there's great soloing here on this album, and like very classic prog sound. This is a very progressive rock record. Like, if you like prog rock, you will love this record. And I like I actually like clean singing, like because you know there's some modern prog metal bands that do more screaming and stuff, but I like it when I can understand what the singer is singing about, and the melodies go well with the song. So I know that for this album, for the artwork, you work with an artist that also works on has done some of the Thresholds uh, importance like covers. So I'm gonna show the artwork here. It's pretty cool album artwork. Can you explain to me a little bit of what you wanted to the artwork to convey?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So, I mean, the Threshold album, Legends of the Shires, which was part 1 of the story, we had this beautiful painting by a Russian artist called Elena Dudina. And it was gorgeous. It kind of had this lovely lush green landscape with waterfalls and this kind of really interesting bridge in it. And it kind of depicted a world where you think something's about to happen here, and that's what we wanted. It like draws you in to want to know what the story is. And so with this one, The Fall of the Shires, I wanted to depict what that world looked like when it had fallen. And someone said to me recently, why didn't you just go back to Elena Dudina and ask her to do that? And I thought, that's crazy. That never even occurred to me. So I apologized to Elena. That would have been a great idea. But what I decided, I went back to Thomas Eberhardt, who's a German artist that Threshold used to work with a lot. And he did some of our classic covers like Hypothetical and Subsurface, which for me are some of the best progressive rock covers ever designed. And we just stopped working with him because we kind of moved on at some point and just looked for different ideas. And I thought, I got to go back to Thomas. He's my favorite artist. I'll go and see what he can do. And he came back with this. And I think it is beautiful. It shows exactly what I wanted to show. So very happy with that. And I hope it's one of those covers that draws you in and makes you think, oh, I want to hear what the music is on that.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I got the promo for this, I read what it was about and prog. I'm like, yeah, I want to listen to this. So
perfect,
yeah.
job done.
Yes,
I will enjoy it. Excellent.
it's a cool album artwork. And yeah, it really goes with the music. So yeah, the themes in the album, obviously it follows a story, and there's a dystopian society. And I know that it's when you're trying, you're writing an album about a dystopian society, because I know that, like, we have to be honest, it's been done a lot in the last few years. There's a lot of albums about dystopian society. But how did you, like, when you were thinking, like, how can I distinguish this album from other dystopian society record? Like, what will make it different? What was your, like, what did you think, like, I can do this to make it like different than others that come before me?
I honestly never occurred to me, to be honest. I never try and compare myself to other people, and I never try and sound like anyone else. It's just I write, and I love writing. And so, yeah, it wasn't even an issue. And I think especially because I wasn't even making it for anybody to hear. I think it never occurred to me.
For yourself.
I remember I remember years ago when I was a student and I was trying painting, and I wasn't the best painter, but I wanted to be. And all my paintings would come out fairly poor. And I thought, well, what's the problem here? I thought maybe it's just because I'm putting too much pressure on myself. So I thought, I'm just going to paint something tonight that is just for me. I'm never going to show it to anybody. Similar story to Oblivion Protocol, really. And I thought, I'll just paint and do something I love and not care, what anyone thinks, because no one's going to see it. And I painted this painting, and I would say it was absolutely beautiful. I absolutely loved it, and best thing I'd ever done by a long way. And it's because I switched off that worry, and I switched off that, what are people going to think? And I just made something that I thought was good art. And story on that one was a friend saw it and thought it was great, so he bought it off me. So I hadn't even got it anymore. So that was a bit of a shame. But that was kind of the same with Oblivion Protocol. I didn't think about anybody else. I wasn't worried how it was going to come across. It was just me making art that I loved.
So maybe that's what we all have to do in life. Just do it for yourself and not put pressure on yourself. And that way you just did it, and it came out like, because I think maybe a lot of artists put pressure on themselves, like, because there's, not everyone can do like a sequel to a progressive metal and do well. Like, you have your Operation Mindcrime 1, but then you have Operation Mindcrime 2. So it can be, sometimes you can put a pressure on yourself, and maybe just don't call it that. Maybe just do a record, and if you think that it follows the story, then you put a name. But you did it, and without any pressure, and maybe that's why it turned out great, because you weren't thinking about it too much.
A funny thing is, I started writing the sequel, another one, and I found it way harder to write. And I stopped and looked at myself, and I realized it was exactly that. I was putting pressure on myself to write the sequel. I thought, it has to sound like the last one. It has to be better. It has to be, And suddenly I had all this pressure because I thought I was writing from a point of view of people were going to hear it. So I've had to shift my thinking. And think, no, I need to go back to who I was when I wrote the first one. So I've done that, and it's going quite well. I'm quite excited. So I know we're here talking about the first one, but I'm already making the second one.
Well, that's good. And and you'll follow the story of the character. So yeah, it's good because people now like Oblivion Protocol won't just be like a one-off album. No, it's an actual band, and you'll do more. Plus Threshold, so you won't ever have time off.
I've never have time off. No, so the plan is 2 more sequels, and that will be the end of that story. I've already got them mapped out and ready. And then after that, if we do any more Oblivion Protocol, it'll be something else. I will finally leave the Shires and do something different.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you can come up with other concepts. You know, there's many things that can be written about. So on this album, for 2 questions. First of all, which song was the hardest to write and why? And which song for you represents the album as a whole? Like if you like listen to this song has everything that this album is about.
Oh, I think we thought This Is Not a Test was that song, probably, and maybe Public Safety. But Public Safety is a little bit lighter. So I think probably This Is Not a Test was the one that kind of summed up the album in one song. But the hardest one to write was Forest in the Fallout. When I was writing them sequentially. I mean, I had the full part 1, I had the full part 2, so I kind of had my bookend, and then I just started writing them sequentially. And when I got to Forest, which was the last one, my initial writing, I had some great ideas, but some bits that weren't. It was a bit like one of my old paintings, and so I rewrote it. I rewrote it as a kind of a more catchy, up tempo, almost a pop song. And I listened to that, and I thought, well, I even got the guys to record that version. And I listened back, and I thought, well, that hasn't really got that gravitas that I need. This is a heavy part of the story. This is where everyone's dying. So I then wrote a 3rd version, and it's quite hard to put down an old version of a song and write a whole new version of it. And I've written, there are 3 Forests in the Fallout. So we put out a 3rd one, and it came out well in the end. But yeah, it was a hard slog.
Yeah, and that's another of the singles that you release, actually.
Yeah, the first song came out. Yeah, worked out well. I'll probably put out the 2nd version at one point because all the guys played great on it, but it just didn't quite work in the flow of the story.
Yeah, no, yeah, you want it to follow the story. So yeah, Richard, the album is great. I really enjoyed it. I like progressive rock, especially when like it has a theme to it, and you can clearly understand the theme, which I think you did with this album. So before I let you go, like since we're talking a lot of prog, rock and metal, like which for you, like being a prog musician, like do you have, like which are your like favorite 5 progressive rock albums from all time, and why?
Wow. So I mean, I'm always going to go back to the beginning with that. The 3 albums that really got me probably when I was younger, there was The Wall by Pink Floyd. I'd probably throw in Wish You Were Here as well. Absolutely adored that record. Genesis, I will pick one, but it's not the one everyone would expect because I'll pick, and then there were 3. And it's the one where they sort of stopped being quite so progressive and they started to move more towards more concise pop songs. But for me, it was just the first one I heard and it blew me away. So that was how I fell in love with Genesis. So that's 3. How many more do you want? So 2 more. I'll throw in Queen. I know they're not really prog, but I think one of the first albums I bought was A Night at the Opera, the one with Bohemian Rhapsody on it. And again, I'd been listening.
That song could be prog.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and Prophet song on that record definitely is as well. But up until then, I'd really been just listening to pop on the radio. And when I discovered bands like Queen, Genesis, and Pink Floyd, it's just my mind was blown. It's like, oh, you can do so much more with pop music than that. So that's 4. I tell you what, a recent one I heard, which surprised me. Roger Waters, the old bass player from Pink Floyd, obviously he carried on a solo career after he left Floyd, and he did an album.
I saw him in concert. Yeah, I saw him for This Is Not a Real tour. Yeah.
Yes. So the last album he did was Is This the Life We Really Want? And I heard that fairly recently, and I thought he's coming from the same sort of place as me in terms of, if I'd have heard that before I made Oblivion Protocol, I don't know, it might have influenced me or something. But it's a great record. If you love Pink Floyd, you listen to that, and he's kind of done that thing. He's got the Easter eggs going back to Wish You Were Here, Easter eggs going back to The Wall. It's just really nice. You can kind of hear that continuation. It's just a fantastic record. So that would be my fifth one.
Nice. Yeah, no,
Which,
that's a good list to have. So what's I know you're releasing the album on the 18th. So what's next for Oblivion Protocol? Obviously, you already told us that you're working on the follow-up to the story, but are you gonna be taking this on the road sometime?
I hope so. Yeah, early days, but very much hope so. I think obviously the album's 42 minutes long. That's not enough to do a headline show yet. We'd be struggling for material. So
Well,
I'm
you know
kind of
what you
thinking,
could do, but this would be probably you could do a tour with Threshold and Oblivion Protocol opens, and then you play with Threshold, but you will be very tired at the
I
end
would be
of the
very
night.
tired. Yeah,
Yeah, because you
I
have to
think that'd
play.
be, I think that'd be really weird psychologically to do that. As fun as it sounds, I think I look at. I mean, a great example of a frontman for me is Damien Wilson, our old Threshold singer. And
Mhm.
nothing against Glenn, but the thing with Damien is his whole life is about being a performer, an entertainer, a storyteller, and that's who he is, and he works very hard at it. And then my whole life has been about being a writer and a producer and a guy in the background, kind of making things happen, not the guy at the front. So the
Yeah,
idea of going from keyboards where I'm just hiding behind the keyboards and just checking everyone's okay to suddenly being the guy at the front, being the entertainer. That's a huge leap, you know. And I know I don't have to do it the way Damien does it, but it's I can see myself doing it, but not straight after doing a Threshold show. I don't think I could change hats that quickly. I think that'd be really,
yeah,
really weird. I think it would take a certain psychological adjustment.
yeah.
But that
I'm
said,
sure
I've
fans
been
would
hiding,
love it, but yeah.
I've been hiding behind the keyboards 30 years, so it's about time I do something different and stop hiding. So I've very much hoped to do it. You know, when we made the video for This Is Not a Test, that was really my first chance of trying out holding a mic and standing in front of a band. And it felt really alien, but at the same time, it felt really nice and really comfortable. I thought, yeah, I could do this. I remember every time we ran through the song, I was imagining there was an audience in front of me, thinking, what would this be like? I thought, yeah, this is good. I could do this. So I very much hope to get the chance. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a change in like from being back but there's other musicians who did that. Like for example, Phil Collins used to be the drummer, and then he
That's
went
true. It
from
worked
drummer.
out quite well for him, didn't it?
Yes, and also like Dave Grohl, he used to be the drummer for Nirvana, and then he was a frontman. So it's been done before. Uh,
That's
it
true. I will be Dave and Phil. That sounds perfect.
yeah.
Not
So
big feet to fill at all, are they?
not
I
a
think
what?
I could do it. Not big boots
Yeah.
to fill at all there. But yeah, I think I could do it. I think I'd really enjoy it, to be honest. So I'm very much hoping we'll get the opportunity. We're already looking at a couple of festivals for next year where we might be able to do it. I think the trickiest bit is getting our schedules to work. When we looked for a date to make the video, I think we looked ahead 6 months and there was one day where we were all
Wow.
available. So we did it on that day. That was quite lucky. So the thought of trying to get everyone for a whole tour, that might be quite tricky. But I will do my best.
It has to, yeah, there's a lot of logistics behind the scenes that
Absolutely.
people don't get to see. So Richard, it's been great here meeting you and talking with you about prog rock and obviously Oblivion Protocol, which is coming out on the 18th. I'll put a link for people who want to pre-order the album or want to know more about the band. So anything you like to say to the fans or the people watching this?
Yeah, I hope you enjoy the record. I had a really good time making it. I hope that comes across. And I would say buy the vinyl. I've just seen it and it's beautiful. The pictures of the vinyl online look really kind of an ordinary green. It's gorgeous. It's deep sort of turquoisey green, translucent color. Just for that, you should buy it.
Yeah, no, and plus the prog rock sounds great on vinyl.
It's made for vinyl. And the record
Yeah,
is made for vinyl. It's 21 minutes each side. It's all perfectly created for you to
per
enjoy.
yeah, it's a perfect timing for a record. So, people, Oblivion Protocol, the album is coming out on the 18th, so I'll put the link so everyone can get it. So, until next time, people, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and good night.